NASCAR makes its return this Sunday, but without any fans in attendance. So when will fans be allowed to go to races again? We're going to talk about that in this video, and don't worry, Chicagoland fans. It sounds like Chicagoland Speedway, in fact, is not going anywhere. How's it going, you guys? My name is Eric, and welcome to Out of the Groove. 2 videos in one day? Somebody stop this man! I was gonna push this video to tomorrow, but I uploaded a video this morning, and pretty much the moment I hit upload, new information was revealed to the public that kind of contradicted some of the things I talked about in that video, so I wanted to kind of make an amendment video of sorts, and that's what this video is going to be. So I'm going to talk about a recent article from Fox Sports with Marcus Smith from Speedway Motorsports. He talked about what he believes is going to happen and how tracks are going to reopen to fans in the near future. But before I get to that, I want to talk a little bit about Chicagoland Speedway, because if you watched my video from, I don't know, a few hours ago, the rumors all weekend long was that Chicagoland Speedway might be getting torn down sometime soon. They lost their one and only NASCAR date for the 2020 season due to this pandemic. They also had to lay off a significant portion of their workforce. No specific numbers given, but it sounded like it was a lot. Also, mostly due to this pandemic. But then this weekend, a document from the city of Joliet, Illinois, where the track is located, indicated a new development plan for the area on and around the speedway. And this was the chart I showed. It was kind of confusing. You look at these blue rectangles, these boxes, it overlaps with the track in some spots. So a lot of people were concerned that this meant they were tearing down the facility in favor of something new, some sort of businesses or housing, or they use the phrase industrial development. But none of that was confirmed, and I actually predicted in my video this morning that Chicagoland Speedway would remain, because earlier this year NASCAR signed a development deal with Hillwood to develop the areas around some of their ISC-owned racetracks. Build shopping centers, add entertainment amenities around some of the ISC-owned racetracks, and Chicagoland fit into that group. Chicagoland Speedway doesn't have a whole lot in the immediate surrounding area, and it sounded like this development deal had more to do with that than with the idea of possibly tearing the entire track down. So I predicted this morning that Chicagoland Speedway would remain, and it sounds like I was right in that prediction. Breathing a sigh of relief more than anything, honestly. I'm a big Chicagoland Speedway fan. I said in my video earlier today, I think it's one of the better mile-and-a-half racetracks on the current schedule. I know we have too many mile-and-a-halfs on the NASCAR schedule, but if we had to get rid of one, Chicagoland Speedway would be far from the first to go, in my opinion. I've never been to Chicagoland Speedway, but it's one that I definitely want to go to sometime soon. But per a new article that was written by Kicking the Tires, literally like the same minute I uploaded my last video, in their article they have a quote from Michael Schwartz, who is Joliet's director of the city's planning commission, and he told them via email that yes, the track would remain. The proposed sale only involves accessory parking on the east side of the property. He also says, under the proposal, 82.3 acres, which is presently an accessory parking area, would be sold to Hillwood Investment Properties for future warehouse development. Chicagoland Speedway would own the remaining balance of racetrack property. Now, this article also mentions that according to records, Hillwood is applying for this subdivision on behalf of NASCAR Enterprises, which owns, of course, 100% of Chicagoland Speedway since that merger. It still mentions that this is an industrial development, and it refers many times to warehouses being built on the land, so it's unclear if this kind of fits that bill that NASCAR was kind of talking about, developing new, like they did in Daytona with One Daytona, or Kansas with Hollywood Casino right there. It's unclear if this new development is for fan entertainment and to try and bring more fans to the track, or if this is something different. It's still kind of unclear, but now that does confirm what I predicted in my video this morning, that Hillwood is involved and that this is not NASCAR tearing down Chicagoland Speedway. Instead, this is NASCAR trying to enhance Chicagoland Speedway for the future. Of course, they're not going to race there in 2020, but presumably they'll be back in 2021. So hopefully that puts to rest any major fears that any Chicago or Chicagoland Speedway fans had. Now, I do want to move on and talk about an interesting article I read from Fox Sports earlier today as well. Most every fan will agree that there is nothing like attending a NASCAR race in person. I mean, tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of fans. It's an all-day event, a party before, during, and after. 40-plus cars rumbling down the racetrack, and depending on the track you're at, could be right on top of the action. As a kid, I was more excited about going to a NASCAR race than I was for Christmas morning. You really cannot simulate or replicate the in-person NASCAR viewing experience. The smell of burnt rubber, the smell of gasoline, the wind, it's always windy at pretty much every NASCAR race, and of course the roar of the engines. I mean, your seat's vibrating the entire time. Unless you got a really nice couch with like motion feedback, you're not coming anywhere close to replicating the experience of being at a NASCAR race in person from your own home. So of course, every fan and their mother wants to be able to go to a NASCAR race again. But in the wake of this pandemic and major sporting events across the country and in many cases across the world being shut down for the last couple of months, it becomes unclear when that will be possible. NASCAR is one of the lucky sports, given the kind of the nature of how the sport is performed and put on. NASCAR has been able to return to competition sooner than a lot of other major sports. NASCAR, of course, is back this Sunday at Darlington. Large events, places where lots of people gather together, have still been shut down for the time being, and we really have seen no signs of that changing anytime soon. So I read this article from Fox Sports with Marcus Smith, who is the head of Speedway Motorsports Incorporated. Speedway Motorsports owns 8 of the racetracks that NASCAR races at, including Texas Motor Speedway, Bristol Motor Speedway, Charlotte Motor Speedway, Sonoma, to name a few. And in this article, of course, he expressed his desire to get race fans back to their favorite racetracks as soon as humanly possible, but he also made a couple interesting observations. Firstly, he mentioned that this isn't really going to come down to what the racetrack or what Speedway Motorsports themselves want. This is going to come down more to what local governments allow them to do. He said this isn't a Speedway decision, this isn't a NASCAR decision. This is a health decision that was determined by the state in keeping with the Department of Health and health experts giving guidance of how to get some action on the track going. That's similar to what we've heard from NASCAR during their recent negotiations with tracks of just getting any form of racing back. And that's part of the reason why Chicagoland Speedway, for example, is probably losing its date for the year, because Illinois has had stricter lockdown recently and shows less of a sign of changing that anytime soon, and so that made that race kind of in jeopardy. NASCAR's had to negotiate with the North Carolina government just to get race teams back in the race shop in some capacity, so it's all about working with local governments, because every state, every city in this country has been infected by this pandemic a little bit differently than the next. And I thought it was interesting to hear Marcus Smith basically confirm that it's going to come down to which local governments allow crowds first. Marcus Smith also iterates that when race fans are eventually allowed to return to races, it will likely be in a reduced capacity at first. He also mentions that Shanghai Disneyland is now reopening at limited capacity after being closed for almost 4 months. So if you want to put an estimated timetable on it, perhaps we could be talking about a couple more months if it kind of goes the Shanghai Disney route, if that's something to compare. And he also said that priority would be given to fans who have already bought race tickets for the race this year. Some fans have already bought tickets for Kentucky later this year, and if Kentucky is allowed to have fans in the stands, maybe it's only 25% capacity, I'm sure that those 25% of fans would be selected among those who've already bought tickets for the race, because some people have already bought tickets for Kentucky Speedway, even though we don't know when or if that race is happening. So I'm sure that is disappointing to hear if you're a fan who hasn't yet bought tickets to a race, but maybe had plans on going to a race later in this year. But personally, I think there's a very good chance that most of the races this year will be run without fans in the stands. Of course, I don't know that. I don't have any insider information. I know NASCAR secretly is hoping that they can put some fans in the stands as early as June, but I just don't see that as realistic at the moment. I think at best it'll be mid or late summer until we see any number of fans return to the NASCAR Cup Series stands. There's a very real possibility it will not happen at all in 2020, and I think that's something that people need to be prepared for, and I think that's probably something NASCAR in the background is preparing for as well. It would be disappointing. It would be different. This will be looked back in 20 years as one of the weirdest seasons of any sport ever, but it's one of the things that I think right now is likely deemed absolutely necessary. And remember, I don't think this is NASCAR's the one who's going to be making the decision. This is going to be a decision made by local governments on a state-by-state, city-by-city basis, determining as to whether or not crowds will be allowed to gather for sporting events. And right now, nowhere in the country is that allowed, and I don't see many places changing that rule for a while. It's going to be a little while till that happens. But hey, at least we get racing back on national TV this weekend. That's extremely exciting. All starts with the Cup Series May 17th, Sunday afternoon at Darlington. And then we have the Xfinity Series May 19th, a Tuesday. And then Wednesday night, another NASCAR Cup race at Darlington. There's going to be a ton of racing in the next couple weeks. In fact, I believe there is a total of like 7 NASCAR races being run in about 11 days here at the end of May. So it's going to be crazy. It's going to be insane. But for all of us watching at home on our hopefully shaky couches, I dropped my phone, shook my phone right out of my pocket. The G-forces in this thing. But for all of us watching at home, hopefully we can make the best of it. I'll be watching all these races. I'll be doing videos after all these races. We'll be continuing the conversation as best we can, as remotely as we can, I suppose. But I'm just excited to see racing back in any capacity. And hopefully we're able to get back to the racetrack, like fans are able to get back to the racetrack sometime later this year. But we'll have to wait and see. Thought that was an interesting article. Chicagoland Speedway sticking around, so a lot of good news. in today's video. Well, some good news, I guess. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate the support. Follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram, subscribe if you are new, and of course, a big thank you to my Patreon supporters. 2 episodes in one day, that would not be possible if not for the support I'm getting from all of you fine people on Patreon. If you also want to support the channel, support the show, you can check out that top link down in the description. I greatly, greatly appreciate it, y'all. I'll probably come up with another video for tomorrow instead of this one. There's a lot to talk about right now, and leading up to this first race back here in just a few days, I've got a lot of things I want to cover. So stay tuned for more this week. It's going to be a busy one, and I'm excited to do it. So everyone stay safe out there, take care of yourselves, and I'll be back sooner rather than later. Have a great rest of your Monday, everyone.